Okay, from our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa. Yes, I'm back home in Los Angeles. This is Green Tag Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Career Development. On Green Tag, we look at the top news each week and explain why it matters to industry professionals. And this week, we're going to recap a little bit of the latest from the Six Flags saga, and then we're going to talk about the report, the massive report that's out from the TEA looking at the Global Experience Index for 2024 and what big trends they have brought up in that report. Yeah, but first, the Six Flags saga continues.
It's such a soap opera. It is such a soap opera. It's now gotten to the point now where it's like we're almost jumping the shark because we've got, and now we introduce an unexpected celebrity into the mix.
100%. This really should be a reality TV show.
Like, oh my God.
Everyone would watch it. It would be great. So over this past week, some just quick updates on this. The Kansas City Chiefs celebrity tight end and Taylor Swift's fiancé, Travis Kelce, he partnered with a hedge fund investment firm on Tuesday to own 9% of the Six Flags shares. And he gave a statement about this. Travis did. He said, I'm a lifelong Six Flags fan and grew up going to these parks with my family and friends. The chance to help make Six Flags special for the next generation is one I couldn't pass up. And of course, in response to that, because basically the fund said that they're going to be reaching out to the board to give suggestions on how they should manage their parks. And the board in response said basically that they will look forward to hearing blah, 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 listening to them. And so there was that happened. But then around the same time that happened, the former CEO of the Cedar Fair Parks, so before the merger, Matt which was the CEO of the Cedar Fair properties, he also gave a statement about basically just about the management of Six Flags. And it's not great. So basically what I'm just going to read what he said because I think it's fascinating and how it all fits together. So he said, for years before the merger, it wasn't clear to me that the Six Flags board members felt ownership in the results that were produced. Cycling through CEOs, producing overly optimistic projections, and overseeing rapid value destruction while maintaining their seats were obvious clues. Post-merger, it appears the historical pattern continues. Now the same players, plus some who served previously for fun, are charged with hiring a new CEO. The recently elected chairperson is Legacy 6 board member. Activists hold 2 seats, and there are 2 other new additions. Even under the best circumstances, it is unlikely that this board would function productively. The company is troubled and has big decisions to make. I'm hoping that one of those decisions is acknowledging reality and then giving the new CEO an opportunity to retire some board members and replace them with people who have proven track records with analogous businesses and demonstrated leadership qualities that will make them strong enough thought partners. He or she deserves this as a foundation for moving forward. So this is all just very interesting because last week we talked about the board members that were leaving. And then, of course, the CEO is also announced that he's leaving. And in last week's episode, we got quite a lot of comments from everyone, which we love to see.
Yes, and thank you.
It's comments just about everything and thoughts on Salim leaving and thoughts on everything. And it seems to me, if I'm going to sum up all of the comments, it seems like a lot of people feel that what's been missing from the board is exactly what this guy is saying, which is that there's a lack of somebody who understands entertainment, basically, and understands what the business actually is. And it seems like, of course, Salim was there to oversee the transition, but maybe he's not needed now that transition is, he's a merger specialist, right? So maybe that's why he's not needed anymore. But basically, it seems like everyone in the comments thinks that there's so much still opportunity with Six Flags, but they need someone who understands entertainment and understands the business. And it seems like that's exactly what both of these people are saying. The previous CEO of the Cedar Fair Parks, that's basically what he's saying. And then even Travis Kelce, who basically became an activist investor. That's kind of what's happening, is that he purchased 9% to become an activist investor because he wants to return it to what it was when he was a child, which was a cedar park is where he went to when he was a child. And so what he's referencing is what it used to be like back as a Cedar property. And so it seems like both of these folks, as well as a lot of people in the comments, are all pointing back to, if all of Six Flags could become what the Cedar Fair parks were previously with an entertainment focus, that would be what everyone seems to want. So I'm just putting all this together. Scott, what do you think?
No, I think it's a very good summation. I think that Chat GPT did a really nice job. We'll just call it Chat PG. I don't know. Or PH. We'll make it PH. There we go.
Yes, Philip, who I just read everything and I was like, oh, this seems to make sense.
It makes sense to me. Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think it goes back, we've been talking about this merger for way too many episodes. And, we all said this, I think you and I said the same thing. If you could take the magnitude of Six Flags and the quality of Cedar Fair and put them together, you'd have a very successful company. And I think that's what a lot of people during the merger were hoping for.
That's right.
I think that, to go back to what the former Cedar Fair CEO said, it is time to let some of the people who made Six Flags what it was and maybe standing in the way of making it what it potentially can be. Yeah, it could be time for them to move on. I think that, this huge influx of money, the Travis Kelce thing, I think, yes, the money is good. I think it also is even more important that it shows that someone a lot of people respect, a lot of people are a fan of, is connected to someone even more people are a fan of, is showing that, they think that Six Flags has the ability to rise again and come back to what it once was. I think the optics of that are probably as important, if not more important, than the actual finance. And the fact that he's, has a percentage ownership. That means it's not just hey, I want Six Flags to be good. No, it's, hey, I want Six Flags to be good. And now I have a rather significant vote in what you do to make it that way. So I think that the optics of that are very strong. I can understand the and I think we said it too very early on. There was going to be some arm wrestling between the two factions. And having done small projects for both companies before they merged, I knew that they ran very differently. I knew that there were some people who were looking at the other, and this happened on both sides, were looking at the other going, well, that's not the way we do it, or that's not a profit. That doesn't make any sense from a profitability standpoint, or that's not a good quality choice, or blah, 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 blah. So apparently the ideologies have not found a way to align quite as quickly as I think everybody wanted them to. I think that, starting with a fresh CEO, starting with some fresh board members, so that it stops being, well, that's not the way we did it in Cedar Fair, or that's not the way we did it in Six Flags. Who cares? Those companies don't exist anymore. They are now under one umbrella. And we said very early on that this was going to have some significant growing pains. And it has gone on longer than I anticipated, to be honest. I was hoping, because again, I grew up in a Six Flags park, although when I was growing up in the park, it wasn't Flags yet. It was Marriott, then Paramount, then Bally, but then became a Six Flags park. So I want Six Flags to be successful. I want this large, this massive conglomerate of parks to be successful. But, as we've hinted at in previous shows, is now the best time to have a bunch of gigantic theme parks? Is that what is driving the attendance right now? And I don't know the answer to that. I have my opinion, but I don't know the answer to that. And especially a conglomeration of theme parks that has not been able to find the synergies that they were hoping for in this merger, has not been able to find a clear sense of direction or purpose. and again, sound like a broken record, but that North Star ain't there. We don't have a clear, sticky idea of what the company stands for, what they're aiming for, what they should be about. And it, based on the board members that are leaving, the CEO that's leaving, the comments from the CEO of the other half of the company that is not, with all the comments that have come out, it's clear that they don't know where they're going. And I think the idea of getting somebody who has some experience in the themed entertainment world, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think this is a situation where it's what is the curse of knowledge. I think there's a bunch of people there who know how businesses work but don't know how theme parks work, so they assume that everybody else is just eager and able to jump on the bandwagon of how to make businesses work. But this is a unique business. This is a business that has a lot more to do with creating memories than creating widgets. So, if you're coming from a widget-based company, or you're coming from even a service-based company that is say, for example, a food purveyor, it's still not the same. Your optics for a theme park are essential. You have to make certain that people feel good about your brand, feel good about your product, and most importantly, feel good when they're there. Because that's what's going to make them want to come back. And you can do all the psychological studies and all the marketing studies you want, but bottom line, you need to clearly and succinctly be able to tell potential guests, here's what we stand for, here's why you should come, and here's how you're going to feel.
Yep.
So if you're looking for board members, call me. I'll be happy to help in any way that I can. God, if they call, wouldn't that be just hysterical? Hey, we saw that you were
insane. No.
But again,
I don't think I would want into that mess, because it does seem like a little bit too much of a power struggle that isn't.
I'd go in as a consultant.
Yeah.
I'd go in as a consultant in a heartbeat. I'd be more than happy to share the 30 plus years of doing various theme parks. I would love that. I probably wouldn't be listened to. I would find it very frustrating. Because again, I know how these kinds of mega corporations work, but it'd be so much fun to be that fly on the wall, sitting in the corner while the big boys are sitting at the kids' table while the grown-ups are arguing. That would be really fun. So,
well, looking at last week's video, something else I wanted to just bring up is just. There was a lot of great comments in there. And, we always like it when people comment, because, of course, Scott always says, that's one of the reasons that we started the show, is to find a place for discussion about these topics. And I think it's all great. It's great to hear all the perspectives from everybody that commented last week. There's too many comments to call out, but there was a few, one by Colin McNeil, which I think kind of sums it up. He says, honestly, I think things are going according to plan, or at least it seems that way. I've always thought the main reason Salim Bissell was brought in as Six Flags CEO is because he has a background in managing large corporate mergers and restructuring efforts. So go figure, once the merger was done, he would move on. That I think makes that sense. We agree. That makes sense. Richard Zimmerman has been an okay CEO for Cedar Fair, but he hasn't done the best job when it comes to placemaking, theming, or adding more family-oriented rides. I think that's also a good point. Looking at other parks with stronger themed areas and more focus on overall guest experience, it's clear that those investments help improve both reputation and long-term brand value. I think Scott just said that. That now seems to be the focus. Family attractions bring in more revenue, and themed areas or rides with storytelling elements tend to last much longer and leave a big impact, not just on guests, but on the culture itself. It's clear that the direction is the future of the industry, and I think Six Flags knows that and wants to find leadership capable of bringing that vision to life across such a massive company. And I think that last part, whether or not they know or not, and whether or not they will find the leadership capable of doing that, I think is what the former CEO is trying to get at in his comments. Basically, I think he's advocating, and potentially Travis Kelce is also, all these people are advocating for finding that CEO, but also giving him the leeway by making sure there are board members that support that vision, that are then supporting him. So it's not just keeping on a bunch of old board members who oversaw value destruction, to put it as he said, but to find someone who will connect all these chains. So that's a very insightful comment, I thought, last week from Colin McNeil. But of course, there's a lot of comments on there, so everyone should go check those out, and please drop here. See, Colin is also in Detroit studying civil engineering at Wayne, so good luck with that, and wants to potentially get into the industry. So Scott and I will be at IAPA. So welcome to come see us there.
Yes, come say hello. I'm teaching every day.
Scott's teaching every day.
Every day. Philip and I are teaching a session at the Haunting Grounds, so just check the schedule. And I don't think Philip's listed yet on the schedule, but if you see my name on the Haunting Grounds, Philip will be there.
Yep. And one other too that's pretty insightful, G Robble 8954. He comments pretty regularly, and I think he always has good insights to share on there. He said the plan they revealed was essentially the Cedar Fair Season of Fun plan they instituted in the last decade, which we've talked about that ad nauseum, but that's pretty on point, right? And then it's to what Scott said, are you just going to actually do it, like execute the thing, but instead of just making the plan? He goes on to say they are just attempting to bring it to Six Flags Legacy Parks, to the parks that are worth keeping. They have named 6 Six Flags Legacy Parks they intend to invest in heavily, and they think it can be brought up to Cedar Fair big park level. They have not at all hidden their intention to divest from parks from day one of the merger. They have 27 parks currently and 15 parks that produce 9% of the financial results and 80% of the attendance. So any park not in the top 15 is potentially expendable. So yeah, we've also talked about all of that, about how, but then again, it's just a question of if not all the leadership is aligned on bringing the Cedar Fair ideology to the other Six Flags parks, then it's not going to work. And I think that's the part that, like, I think all these folks are talking about, where they're like, clearly there is misalignment in the board as whether or not to actually take that Cedar Fair ideology and expand it to Six Flags versus the other way around, which is what Scott was mentioning before about the factions.
I think now is the point where we all have to stop reinforcing is it the Six Flags model or the Cedar Fair model? Because neither of those companies exist. I said it earlier. Neither of those companies exist anymore. It is now one company, and we need to find there needs to be a reevaluation of the plan, a reevaluation of the North Star, a reevaluation of the execution, and that can only be done with people who have industry experience within the themed attraction industry. It's great to have, and I will say, if it's the right CEO, they don't necessarily have to have themed attraction experience. It would be nice. It makes sense. It makes it easier. But at the very least, they have to surround themselves with people who do. Because again, managing at that high level, they're not going to be involved in what's the story we're telling at King's Dominion. They couldn't care less. I mean, they could care because they're looking, of course, at the well-being of the company overall. But if they've got great storytellers or great people who can enact that, and they respect that skill set, then that's a potential really good CEO at this point. I always say, don't surround yourself with people who think like you. Surround yourself with people who think differently from you, but you respect, so that you can continue to grow and make the best of the environment as it is. But I think if Six Flags were to make that leap of faith, to stop going Cedar Fair wanted to do it this way, Six Flags wanted to do it this way, blah 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 blah, going back and forth. Screw it. It doesn't matter. Start from scratch. Rebuild based on what you know, and say, this is, now that we've come together, here are our assets. Here, do a SWOT analysis. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. And our new goal is this. And I love the idea. I mean, I hate to see parks go away, but I love the idea of looking at, what are our top performers? What parks, as we saw with some of the parks that have already been on the chopping block, so to speak, what parks are competing with other parks that are now part of the same system? I think that, cutting back to be lean and mean, this is nothing new for Six Flags. So there shouldn't be any fight from the old guard from Six Flags. Because I just kind of going back and going back in time. There was a time where Six Flags just wanted to expand, and they expanded and expanded. They bought everything they possibly could. They bought every family theme park they could afford. Some of them were not particularly good, and they were even embarrassed to put their names on it. I will use this very specific example. We went to Ohio many years ago and went to Geauga Lake just after Six Flags had purchased it. But it was not Six Flags Geauga Lake. It was Geauga Lake, a Six Flags property in really tiny print underneath. And what they did was they spread themselves so thinly that they couldn't make any of their parks stellar enough to stand out above the competition. So they had to pull back again. I think they need to take the insights from both sides, throw them into a barrel, shake them all up, and say, okay, here's what the plan is for this company, because it's not Cedar Fair and it's not the old Six Flags, it's something new. And I think that goes back to what we've said from the get-go. If we could take the best of both worlds and find a way to have them enhance one another. And, you may need a new CEO who's going to open the door for that.
Yep. With board support. Yeah.
With board support. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, now we're all caught up on the Six Flags saga. So
until next time.
Yeah.
There'll be another chapter. I think we should get some Six Flags, that sort of bad soap opera music that plays in the background. That sort of.
We need a sting for it.
Yeah.
Next
time on the Six Flags saga.
Well, our next story here is about the TEA Global Experience Index, which just dropped. Now, the TEA does this every year, and this is, I think, probably the gold standard, I think, for looking at attendance levels at everything, not just theme parks. It also covers museums, and it covers water parks and the whole sphere of location-based entertainment. And they do compile it every year. It gives us the numbers that we need to understand what is trending for attendance and expansions all worldwide. So it's a big report. It's 43 pages. I did go through the entire report, and we're not going to get to all of it before we finish this show. So we're going to continue the discussion in our Patreon. We'll just get as far as we can. But on a macro level, the combined attendance of the top 25 theme parks globally grew 2.4% in 2024. Remember that these reports are compiled yearly, and so right now we're looking at 2024 numbers. So they're lagging indicators. But last year, the combined attendance of the top 25 parks grew 2.4%, which is good. However, it's all in the nuance here. In general, the leading parks in the mature markets of the US, Japan, and Western Europe saw flat or even potentially a little bit negative in some parks changes, while the leading international parks in China saw notable growth and registered record years, including Shanghai Disneyland, which grew 5%, and Universal Studios Beijing, which grew 8.6%.
Wow, that's huge. That's
huge. Yeah. So on a macro sense, basically what they're saying is the more modern developed areas have kind of got that post-pandemic, everything's kind of settled, and they're just going flat right now, which isn't great for some of us, especially if all of your business comes from those markets or whatnot. It's kind of flat. But it does dovetail with what we've talked about, which is that there's really nothing opening in these regions next year. It's kind of like a little bit of a weird year, but it's because things are flat, right? And just the massive growth that's happening in China as well as the Middle East. So they mentioned the Disney investing $60 billion, the Magic Kingdom expansion, Disney Abu Dhabi, Six Flags Qiddiya, mention all these big projects that are happening. But if you look at the macro trends, a lot of the investment is tilted in the Middle East and then in China. And so if you look at here, North America parks remain relatively flat, showing a minor decline of 0.3%. The report says that this reflects normalization of post-pandemic recovery patterns. So it also says it is a trend of operators focusing on revenue optimization rather than pure volume. We have also talked about this whole, the constant back and forth, right? That Scott and I have talked about the constant pendulum of, are you measuring park attendance or are you measuring per caps? And the report also acknowledges that it's like some operators are switching over to measuring per caps versus attendance because attendance is flat.
And this pendulum goes back and forth. It's whatever looks best to the stockholders.
That's right.
That's really the bottom line. It's the bottom line. Is it, I can remember back in the day at one of the parks that I have worked with the marketing, the marketing year-end review was, well, we placed this many ads and we did this many in studios and we had this many invited groups to come from all of these different tourist places, and therefore we had a successful year. And I'm like, but how many clicks of the turnstile did that make? Or how many dollars did, I mean, you can take data and statistics and make it pretty much say anything you want. But I think that in this particular case, we have to recognize that you've got to read between the lines. You've got to dig a little bit deeper. You've got to find out, okay, so they're down in attendance, but they're up in per cap, or they're up in per cap, but they're down in attendance. I always used to jokingly say, I don't get paid in attendance.
Yep.
So,
yep. Well, it should surprise no one that Disney has maintained their market leading position. And, the report says that basically domestically, Epcot saw the largest attendance increase, which is 1.3%, as a result of the multi-year transformation of the Communicore Hall, which we've talked ad nauseum about that. However, over at Universal in 2024, it saw that the North American parks lost all attendance, with both parks in Orlando dropping more than 2.5% and Hollywood dropping nearly 10% in 2024, attendance-wise. They also experienced 4% decline in revenue from 2023 due to lower park attendance and foreign currency fluctuations. So what this chart reminded me, just getting out of all the nitty gritty and all that, what this reminded me of was just how crazy Disney is compared to everybody. Like, if you look at the 2024 numbers, Disney is at 145 million, right? And the next person is at 87, and it's Fantawild, which we never talk about. But like, it's like 87. It's like literally, it's like 145 million attendance for Disney, and then 87 million for Fantawild, and then 62 million for Merlin. And then we finally get to Universal, which is at 58 million. And then you get to Six Flags, which is at 50 million. So in other words, Six Flags, even combined, is only 1/3 of Disney's attendance.
Yep.
And it's also only the fifth, and also not even that much too separate from Universal in 2024, which is before Epic Universe. But just so it's just interesting, right? How it's like, oh, actually, number 2 and number 3 are stuff that we never talk about, which is Fantawild and Merlin, who are just doing their things in China and then Europe, and then you get to Universal and then Six Flags, which we spend so much time talking about, but is only 1/3 of Disney. So
well, and I think Americans get very very America-centric when they're talking about theme parks, because and I'm guilty of it too. In this past year, having visited both Shyamalan Spaceship and PortAventura World, these are things that I had never, and this, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I had heard of but didn't really know what they were, or to what level they were. Successful, unsuccessful, how grand they were, how polished they were, how much the guest experience supersedes so many of the American parks. It's not even funny. So yeah, we and again, I think Disney recognizes that, because again, there's not a region really that Disney hasn't expanded into now that they've announced Abu Dhabi.
That's right.
So they have fingers in all the pies, and it just goes, we were talking about Six Flags trying to find their North Star. Well, Disney's North Star has always been tell a great story
Mhm.
Tell a great story and keep expanding on that story. Open new chapters, open new doors for that story. Find new ways to tell that story. Even with IPs that are incredibly powerful and popular, to take the parts and pieces and put them together in a new way. The Nemo show at Animal Kingdom, or which I during the Edge tour that I did last year at IAPA, or 2 years ago at IAPA.
Yep.
The whole way they basically deconstructed that story, took all the parts and pieces and put them together into a new story that felt like it was something we already had experienced and already knew, but was fresh and different. That storytelling power is amazing. The villain show, taking the
Yep.
villains and redoing them in a new light and a new way is I think why Disney continues to be on top, is because they just keep telling good stories. They keep expanding into markets where people want to hear those good stories. So hopefully you enjoy listening to our good stories, but unfortunately this story has come to an end. So we all lived happily ever after. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, once again, please subscribe. Thank you so much. Continue to comment. We loved all the comments. As Philip mentioned earlier, the whole reason we started doing this is not to provide all the answers, but to get people in the industry talking about what the key trends are, what the key topics are, so that you are not going into it blind, so that you are going into every day of your work trying to make it better and trying to figure out what can we do to, we try to provide takeaways, but it's not every takeaway is going to be applicable to every single person listening. But if you understand the trends and how things are changing, then we've done our job, because that way you continue to comment and continue to ask questions. So thank you all very much for being a part of this process, and please continue, because we really do appreciate it, and we will continue to do our best to at least mention some of the comments and bring them to light as part of the show, because we want to share that with everybody who watches or listens. So until next time, this is Scott Swenson, and on behalf of myself and Philip Hernandez, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we will see you next week.